Have you ever told a joke that didn't land? Have you ever used sarcasm and somebody doesn't pick up on it? You weren't on the same page. You miscommunicated in some way. Today, I'm going to talk about how miscommunications in autism research and treatment have failed the autistic community. But first, I need to make sure everybody knows what autism is. And if you're a little bit older, you might remember Asperger's syndrome or pervasive developmental disabilities. Those terms aren't used anymore. Since 2013, we've used the autism spectrum to describe the range of symptoms people experience. Autism spectrum disorders are defined as differences in presentation and severity for a few key characteristics. The first of which is persistent deficits in reciprocal social communication and social interaction. Oftentimes, those interactions are with non-autistic people. The second is restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. And these symptoms must cause significant impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of function to meet criteria for diagnosis. And oftentimes, these symptoms show up early in life. That's why autism is called a developmental disability. But for some people, they don't show up until later, when communication and relationships become more complex. Applied behavior analysis therapy is the most common treatment of autism spectrum disorders, and there's a lot of support for its use in changing behaviors. For example, it can be used to stop harmful behaviors like skin picking or increase beneficial behaviors like personal hygiene. But some people in the autism community, including some people who have received this treatment, have raised some issues. For example, people may be trained to maintain eye contact even though they find it painful. They might be encouraged to adopt interests the therapist deems age appropriate instead of ones they actually like. They might be trained to stop repetitive behaviors they find comfortable, they find relaxing, like pacing. They might also be encouraged to attend birthday parties, to make friends, even though they have sensitivities to sound. They might even be told that they need to do these things because other people won't put in the effort to understand them. Put simply, treatment primarily consists of training autistic people to act like non-autistic people. Imagine this. You go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you that you like your hobbies too much, that you have to look people in the eyes, even though it feels bad, because if you don't, they'll think you're rude. I know you like flapping your hands when you're excited, but other people find it weird. And if you want to make friends, you have to fit in. So what do you do when the doctor tells you this? You do it, right? They're the doctor. They know what's best for you. So you try to change your behavior. You try to fit in. There's actually a word for this. It's called masking. It means suppressing natural autistic behaviors and instead adopting behaviors more accepted by non-autistic people. Think about masking this way. Have you ever had a job interview or met somebody really important at work or met your partner's family and friends for the first time? You're nervous, you want to make a good impression, you wear nice clothes, you say the right things. It's exhausting. Now, imagine doing this every day in every interaction, and it still doesn't work. People still don't seem to understand you. Up to this point in history, misunderstandings and miscommunications have been blamed on autistic people. Specifically, their autism is the cause of our misunderstanding. And this explanation conveniently absolves non-autistic people for the blame of the unsuccessful interaction, likely resulting in them writing it off, never thinking about it again, never improving for the next time, or worse yet, avoiding a next time altogether. Dr. Damian Milton, an autistic researcher, didn't agree with this explanation. He thought both people were responsible. So he would go on to propose the double empathy problem, which is a breakdown in mutual understanding more likely to occur when people of very differing dispositions attempt to interact, creating problems for both parties. Milton was attempting to point out how autism research and treatment was failing autistic people from the perspective of someone in that community. And if he's right, the autistic community faces some really big risks. If autistic people are misunderstood by their doctors, teachers, parents, friends, they may be at higher risk of mental illness. And worse yet, they may not be getting treatment for any illnesses they may already have. And unfortunately, that is what we see. Co-occurring mental illnesses are common in the autistic community, much more common than in the non-autistic community. About 70% of autistic people have a co-occurring mental illness. About 40% have several. And co-occurring illnesses are difficult to treat, especially when the therapist and client don't communicate well. Additionally, autistic people are at a higher risk of suicide and self-harm, likely due to misdiagnosis, barriers to care, and some social factors we'll talk about in a little bit. If these facts are new to you, it's because autism spectrum disorders are highly stigmatized and misunderstood diagnoses. For example, some people still believe that autism spectrum disorders are necessarily accompanied by intellectual disabilities, but that is not true. Only about 33% of autistic people have an accompanying intellectual disability. Making things more complicated is racial bias in diagnosis and differences in presentation by gender identity. But I am a researcher, and as researchers, it is our responsibility to better understand autism spectrum disorders to help those in that community. So the question, do autistic people have social and communication problems, is a worthwhile one. We should ask it and we should try to answer it. However, unfortunately, that is not the question researchers have been asking. You see, autistic research has been done by non-autistic people, using non-autistic stimuli and depicting behaviors typical of non-autistic people. So the actual question researchers have been asking is, do autistic people have social and communication problems with non-autistic people? And we didn't want to ask that question again. So, taking Dr. Milton's lead, Ben and I decided to ask a slightly different question. Do non-autistic people have social and communication problems with autistic people? My co-author, Ben Fingston, is on the autism spectrum, and he wanted to test the double empathy problem, except there really wasn't any way to test non-autistic understanding of autistic experiences. So for about 6 months, we talked about it. And eventually, we came up with 17 scenarios describing autistic experiences and 4 control scenarios that were not autism specific. And if you look closely, you'll see we don't give the characters any ages, we don't describe what they're thinking or feeling, we left that to the participants in the study. So we asked them several questions, but we also had our co-author, Jillian Walker, rate participant responses for what participants thought characters were thinking and feeling in these scenarios. We described that as over and under mentalizing, and you can see the differences up here, but basically, we wanted to know if people would give thoughts and feelings as explanations for character behavior. This is because people on the autism spectrum are theorized to have deficits in understanding what others are thinking and feeling, and this is our attempt to quantify that. This kind of thing hadn't really been done before, so the study was very much exploratory. We tested 51 autistic people and 51 non-autistic people, gender identity roughly distributed equally, and what we found was that our autistic scenarios were representative of autistic experiences, with the autism group reporting that they related to and had acted that way in the past significantly more than the non-autistic group. We also found that both groups engaged in more mentalizing for the autism scenarios than the control scenarios. Interestingly, the autistic group did so more appropriately. The non-autistic group engaged in under-mentalizing autistic characters slightly more than the autism group. Importantly, we did not observe any mentalizing deficits by the autistic group for characters experiencing autistic experiences. And these are experiences that those people related to and reported having. Now, our study was exploratory, and that comes with certain limitations, but we are not the only people to find support for the double empathy problem. In a study using non-autistic college students, they showed them videos of pairs of people, non-autistic pairs, autistic pairs, or mixed pairs. And what they found was those non-autistic students rated the non-autistic pairs most favorably and the mixed pairs as least successful. Several other studies found something similar, where students described autistic peers as less likable, more awkward, and less trustworthy. In criminal justice situations, autistic people were described as deceptive and lacking credibility. In job interview settings, they're described as less competent and hireable. In the workplace itself, they're more often seen as misbehaving. In peer interactions, non-autistic people mistakenly perceive autistic people as less socially motivated than they actually are. All of these things matter, and they can have long-term consequences for people on the autism spectrum because these judgments are felt by autistic people, with autistic adults reporting more misunderstandings and less acceptance by the non-autistic community. We have to better serve the needs of this community, especially if doing so is as controllable as listening to and accepting these people as they actually are. So what can we do? Let's start with care providers. It is vital to listen to your clients, as they may not present with the same symptoms as other people when experiencing depression and anxiety. And care providers have an obligation to understand their clients. That will include being open, being aware, and being educated as we learn more. And if you're a parent or an adult on the autism spectrum, all of your needs may not be met in one location by one provider. This is really a healthcare system problem, but some providers are taking strides, like the Neurodevelopmental Center in town. As researchers, we simply need better measures. We need more stimuli, more different kinds of stimuli that represent autistic experiences. We need autistic faces, autistic interactions, mixed interactions, all kinds of things. But really, we need more autistic voices. The research I talked about today doesn't happen without Ben. And in the research arena, these voices can lead to questions that non-autistic people would never think to ask. You know, I think the actual problem, and perhaps there's some hope for the future in this, can be found in our study, where in the non-autistic group, 31% of people said they only interact with an autistic person once a year. 20% said they've never interacted with an autistic person. Compare that to the autistic group, whose 30% said they interact with another autistic person daily. Did you know one of the most effective ways to create positive attributions towards people with disabilities is spending time with them? We need to start taking responsibility for our side of interactions. All of the non-autistic people I talked about today, the ones that found their peers as more awkward and deceptive, they were non-autistic people like me and maybe you. All anybody wants is to be accepted for who they actually are and to spend time and make memories with people they care about. So, neighbors, friends, teachers, parents, TEDx viewers, we have a personal responsibility to be more understanding, to be more open to different ways of being, to make new friends. Today, March, Developmental Disabilities Month, is a great time to start. Thank you.